Julia's hands never stopped moving. Cloth in one hand, polish in the other, every stroke measured, every motion smooth. She worked as if each task was the only thing that mattered, never wasting a second, never letting her eyes wander. When footsteps echoed nearby, her head stayed down, her pace unchanged. She didn't glance up. She never did. It wasn't shyness. It was something deeper, sharper. The kind of stillness a person learns only after life has taught them that being noticed can be dangerous. She carried it in the way her shoulders stayed just a little tense, in how she stepped aside before anyone could come too close. Whatever she was holding back, she held it tightly, like the last defense against something that had once tried to break her. Bennett Nolan noticed. He noticed the first week she arrived. The way she moved was too precise to be clumsy and too careful to be casual. She didn't fumble or rush the way others did when he walked into a room. She didn't try to please him with words or smiles. She just stayed out of his way entirely. From the top of the grand staircase, he let his gaze follow her as she adjusted a vase on a table below. Her movements were steady, her face unreadable, but her eyes flicked once, quickly, toward the nearest exit. That single glance told him more than any conversation could. It was instinct. Escape, if needed. He should have dismissed it. She was just staff. But instead, the thought settled in and refused to leave. What is she hiding? Julia worked alone, her hands moving in small, steady circles as she finished the last task of the night. A quiet hum slipped past her lips, soft and almost trembling, a tune she didn't even realize she was carrying. Her mind was far from the work in front of her. She didn't hear him at first. The footsteps were too quiet, the movement too still. When she finally looked up, Bennett was there. The sight of him pulled the air from her chest. She straightened quickly, clutching the cloth in her hand as though it might shield her. "Sir, I'm almost done," she said, her voice sharper than she meant. She tried to move past him, but the narrow space forced her close. In her hurry, the hem of her dress caught against the edge of the counter. Her eyes widened. "Please don't lift my dress." Her voice shook, not with embarrassment, but with something colder. Real fear. He froze. The sound of that fear lodged deep under his skin. He could have stepped back. He didn't. Slowly, his fingers brushed against hers as he moved her hands aside. She tensed instantly, her body rigid. The fabric rose only an inch, maybe two, but it was enough. The scar cut across her skin, jagged and deep, stretching from her thigh toward her hip. Not an accident. Not a mistake. Violence, carved into her. Bennett's eyes locked on it, the shock in him hardening into something heavier. "Who did this to you?" "It doesn't matter," she said quietly, her tone holding both steel and exhaustion. "I'm here to work, not talk about my past." She turned before he could speak again, slipping out of the room with quick, controlled steps. He stayed where he was, the image of that scar burning in his mind. Whatever her story was, he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let it stay buried. Julia's hands moved over the fabric, folding each sheet with the same care she gave to every task. She didn't notice him at first, or maybe she did and chose not to show it. Bennett leaned in the doorway, watching her for a long moment before speaking. "You don't have to be afraid of me." Her hands froze mid-fold. She didn't turn right away. "Maybe not," she said finally, her voice low. "But I have every reason to be careful." He stepped into the room, closing some of the distance between them. She set the sheet aside and leaned back against the table, her fingers twisting together. When she spoke again, her words came slow, deliberate, as if each one had weight. "When I was 16, I worked for a family who treated me like I was nothing. The man of the house, he tried to hurt me." Her breath caught but didn't break. "I fought back. I escaped. But I was left with this." She didn't have to name the scar, he saw it in his mind as clearly as if she'd shown him again. No one protected me. No one. Bennett's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing, not at her, but at the memory she carried. He could see it in her posture, in the way she kept her chin up despite the weight of it all. I can't change what happened to you, he said, his voice steady. But no one will ever touch you like that again. Not while I'm here. Her gaze searched his face, looking for the lie she was certain would be there. Instead, she found nothing but truth, offered without demand. Something in her eased, only slightly, but enough for him to notice. Bennett now knows part of her past, but what he doesn't know could still break them both. Julia walked in with a tray balanced in her hands, ready to set the table and leave without a word. But Bennett was already there, seated with 2 cups in front of him. The sight made her pause. Sit. His voice was calm, certain. She hesitated, still holding the tray. I don't see you as a maid, he said, cutting through the silence. I see you as a woman who survived something no one should have to face. The words held no pity, no judgment. They landed somewhere deeper, in a place she hadn't let anyone reach in years. Slowly, she set the tray down and took the seat across from him. He slid one of the cups toward her. Tea, he said. You strike me as a tea person. Her hands wrapped around the cup, the warmth sinking into her skin. She didn't speak at first, only nodded slightly in thanks. Most people think strength is about power or control, Bennett said, his eyes steady on hers. But the kind you have, it's rarer. It's the kind that survives quietly, even when no one notices. Her throat tightened at his words, unexpected and disarming. She looked down, but his hand moved across the table, stopping just before hers. His fingers brushed lightly against hers, a touch so small it could be missed, yet deliberate enough to feel like a vow. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers shifted, closing the gap between them by the smallest measure. It wasn't surrender. It was trust, offered for the first time. Days blurred into weeks, but something in her routine had changed. Bennett began appearing in places she didn't expect him, taking the heavy tray from her hands before she could protest, standing beside her as she worked, asking questions that had nothing to do with the job. In the garden, he strolled at her side, pretending to study the roses while drawing pieces of her past out of her with quiet, careful words. At night, she sometimes found herself in the library with him, cups of tea cooling on the table as their conversation stretched far past the hour she should have left. One afternoon, they ended up arranging flowers together. She caught herself laughing at something he said, really laughing, and the sound startled her. It had been years since it had come so easily. She told herself it was kindness. Nothing more. A man like him couldn't see her as anything beyond the staff. But every day, that belief felt less certain, and every moment they shared seemed to carve its own place inside her. She was halfway to the servants' wing when she heard him call her name. His voice was softer than usual, but it stopped her in place. She turned to see him standing at the top of the grand staircase, his gaze steady, almost vulnerable. I know where I stand in life, he began as he descended, each step unhurried. But I don't care about wealth or titles. I care about the woman who taught me that strength isn't in money. It's in surviving, and loving despite the pain. Her breath caught. I never thought a man from your world would want someone like me. He reached the last step, closing the space between them until she could see the truth in his eyes. Julia, there's no one like you. His hands lifted, cupping her face with a gentleness that felt both fragile and unshakable. When his lips met hers, it was slow, certain, a kiss without demand, without claim. It carried only one thing, a promise. For the first time in years, she felt safe in someone's arms. A promise has been made, but promises can be broken when the past comes knocking. The changes were small at first. A passing glance that lingered. Footsteps in the hall that fell in rhythm. The staff noticed them walking side by side, their voices low, laughter slipping between them when they thought no one was listening. In the garden, his hand would brush hers as they worked. In quiet corners, they shared moments that needed no words. To anyone watching, it was simple. To them, it was something unspoken but certain, that love didn't care about status, and scars did nothing to lessen a person's worth. Her guard was not gone, but it was softer now. His vow still echoed in her mind, each day making it easier to believe. And yet, beneath the steady beat of this new closeness, a part of her still waited for the ground to shift. But just as peace began to feel real, a shadow from her past was already moving closer, and this time, she knew running might not be an option.